Howdy partners, it's so good to be here again. It's that time of the year where I do all my year-end lists. And this is gonna be the second one. And though it's rare that I take time on this YouTube channel to talk about music, most of my time is spent diving into the worlds of cinema or game development. After all, they are my main source of inspiration when it comes to my craft as a level designer. Using all that knowledge of storytelling and visual composition helps infuse the creativity of my designs. That being said, there is never, ever, not even for a quarter of a half a moment's brief hesitation, there is no single doubt that music is not, and has not, and will not be one of my greatest sources of inspiration, not just in my life, but in my creative process as well. It is the coffee to my cherry pie that fuels this corporeal machine to produce the art that lives inside this vessel. And Lord knows there has been plenty of great music to get inspired in this chaotic, dystopian, and terrifying year of 2025. Of course, this is just my opinion, and I'm sure there are plenty of albums that have gone under my radar. And this year-end list will likely be more brief, comparatively to that beefy top 40 games list I did not too long ago, or the upcoming films list, which is going to be the last of the three. One day that will be ready, but it is not this day. Today we talk about music, and these are the 40 records that resonated most with me. For our first group of 10 albums, I'm going to choose some that I really appreciated, but perhaps I haven't listened to quite as much as other records that year. And that is not a reflection of their quality. There's only so much time in one year with all my varied activities. And I imagine that other folks will rank these albums much higher on their list, and that's totally understandable. And in other cases, there are some records that I only warmed up to over time. One of the many joys of doing these year-end lists is to rediscover a gem, and only to now realize just how much it has bloomed on me in the background over all this time. So with all that being said, let us begin. To kick off this list, I'm gonna start with Bon Iver's latest record, Sable Fable. It is one of the most beautiful albums of the year, certainly, and another solid addition to the growing catalog of fantastic Bon Iver records. Though this time around, the experimental, glitchy nature the last few Bon Iver albums explored have been drastically dialed back. Honestly, I wasn't super keen on it at first, not that I didn't like it, but over the months it slowly found its way into my heart, even if it will never be my favorite Bon Iver record. That is an impossible feat to overcome, seeing just how integral to my growth the original Bon Iver records were. But never say never. I'm sure Justin Vernon and company still have plenty of tricks up their sleeve. Next, at number 39, Chappelle returns very soon after their last fantastic record, Cool World, which just came out last year. Though this time they're teaming up with Hayden Pedigo to create a very different kind of sound. It's not nearly as heavy as their past projects. It's decidedly on the softer side of things. Not that it doesn't have a few moments of that signature Chappelle, grungy, sludgy grindcore, but it is still a very powerful artistic statement, with many quality tunes. I highly recommend it. I think it's a bit of a hidden gem and not many people are talking about it. I love it when artists take these kind of risky left turns. I sincerely believe it will pay off in the long run. Though this next album, in contrast, is heavy as hell. At number 38, Deaf Heaven's Lonely People with Power is a pulverizing and thought-provoking black metal shoegaze album. I admit that it's not usually the kind of genre music I jump into. I've never been personally super keen on black metal. No hate, of course. I get the appeal, but it is impossible to deny the talent on display with this record. And it is another record that grew tremendously on me over the year. As far as I'm concerned, it is without question an essential metal album from 2025 that I imagine will rank much higher on other people's lists. The hype and critical acclaim are most deserved. And I will permit myself to cheat and open a parallel portal as well at number 38. And this will not be the last time we see this kind of weird anomaly on this list, folks. You better get used to it. The rules were made to be broken. I had the good fortune to listen to the latest Ash Breather record, La Grande Bouffe, at their listening party, if we could call it that. Whatever we want to call it, I'm glad I was there to discover this metal gem. The album in its entirety was actually played with this video of this industrial factory looping in the background. It was a hilariously perfect fit for this absolutely pulverizing metal record from this local Montreal band. Anyway, I do consider this album to be a bit of a gateway drug for me to appreciate that Death album I mentioned a moment ago. But even without that detail, it's just a great sludgy, progressive, and conceptual album that I really enjoyed listening to this year, especially while I was going on runs. This shit really gets the blood pumping. Now, for the rest of the 30s, I'm going to shout out a bunch of great records from women, or at the very least women who are primarily featured on vocals. Because tell me, where would we be in this world without amazing women in our lives? So let's take a moment to give it up and shout out the incredible women in our lives. Without further ado, at number 37, Lady Gaga's Mayhem is a total banger of a pop album. Not that I didn't like her past music, it is impossible to understate her incredible incredible world-class talent, even to her detractors. But this is generally the first time that I found myself listening to her record on repeat. There's so many songs here that I genuinely believe will be regarded as classic Lady Gaga material years down the line. They're instantly recognizable and hella catchy. Without question, a major landmark in 2025 pop music. Admittedly, it is rather weird to follow up with some Lady Gaga after some black metal, but that's exactly the kind of chaos I love having in my life. Welcome to the Bottomless Pit. You never know what to expect. Moving on to number 36, we have the latest record from Japanese Breakfast. For Melancholy Brunettes and Sad Women is another enchanting alternative rock record, much like each Japanese Breakfast project. And it's been a solid 4 years since the last album, Jubilee, which I totally loved. And even to this day, the opening track, Here Is Someone, is one of the most beautiful tracks I've heard all year long. It captures a euphoric feeling that makes me feel like I'm blissfully floating away on a cloud. The rest of the album is great, but it was such a surprise and a delight to hear Japanese Breakfast feature in the latest Celine song film, The Materialists. Not only was My Baby the perfect way to end that film, but it also happens to be one of the best songs the band ever put out. I love it. At number 35, Fancy That is another fantastic project from Pink Panthers. It really doesn't matter that this mixtape is just 20 minutes long. It's super catchy and infinitely replayable. It's a definite highlight this year in hyperpop music. And I was actually blissfully unaware until I was preparing this year-end list, but it seems that Pink Panthers also put out a remix mixtape called Fancy Some More, which is a 3-disc album where the first 2 discs feature collaborations between various artists and DJs. Huh. I guess I'll have to check that out eventually. Pink Panthers may be only 24 years old, but she's clearly a talent that's here to stay. It's exciting to see what comes next for her. I think she's just getting better with each new project. Definitely one to keep an eye on. Okay, the next pick might upset a lot of people because where it's ranking in the list. This is an album that got universal acclaim from pretty much everyone under the sun. And honestly, I get the hype. It's just not a genre of music that generally resonates with me. Still, I like to think that I'm open-minded enough that I'm able to recognize the powerhouse talent behind my pick at number 34, which is Rosalia's Lux. This is an epic album with incredible range. It still blows me away to see the lengths that Rosalia went to sing in, what was it, 14 different languages on this album? Wow, now that's dedication. There's a lot to admire here, from the production, the story and thematics, and the catchy larger-than-life operatic songs like Berghain, featuring Bjork of all people. That one really got me excited. I have zero doubt that this is the kind of record that will continue to grow on me over the years. One day I might just regret that I didn't place it higher, but as it is today, I'm going to stick with it. So perhaps this is a good moment transitioning to the next album to remind you all that 1, these lists are super subjective, and 2, regardless where they fall, they each have their own fantastic qualities that is unique to them. So let's not lose sleep over where they're ranking and just enjoy the great music. Because indeed, at number 33, Lotus by Little Simz is another record that could easily rank higher. It's another intricate and complex rap album that gives so much to think about. Admittedly, it's not an album that I listen to nearly as much as our other records, and I'm confident that with repeat listens, more nuance and depth will be discovered. But even so, it still left an impression on me. And Simbi is still the queen of rap as far as we are all concerned. Is anyone really going to debate that? Next up at number 32, Hayley Williams dropped a megaton collection of songs, which are now gathered under this single umbrella, which is known as the Ego Death at the Bachelorette Party. It's a giant 20-track record filled to the brim with a bunch of great pop alternative rock bangers. Honestly, some of my favorite songs of the year are found on this record, and I still revisit them today on a regular basis. Perhaps I do prefer the lean and mean consistency of the previous Paramore record, which was a fantastic return to form for that group. And as for this Ego Death album, as much as I do enjoy it, maybe there is a little bit of fat that could have been trimmed. Still, it's an impressive collection of songs that I would recommend to anyone. And to close off this first batch of 10 albums is a record that I'm discovering quite late in the year actually. But even so, it's already embedded itself in my heart. Wednesdays Bleeds is a fantastic alternative rock album, and it's got a lot of variety too. It swings from a very grungy vibe to some country twang, and it excels in both just as great. But I have to admit, the first 3 songs in particular off this record, I would listen to them on repeat. God damn, those are some great tracks. It's actually the first I'm hearing of this band, and word around the campfire, this is their best record to date, so I'm very curious to see what comes next for them, and I'm also curious to check out some of their OG material. A little bit late to the party, but I'm glad I caught wind of it. At the top 30, getting a little hot in here. I think I need to loosen up a little bit. Ugh. To kick off the next 10 records, in these dark dystopian times, I think we could all use with some great dance music. And that's exactly what these next few albums achieved. Admittedly, it's a genre of music I don't often get into, but you can't deny just how contagiously catchy they are. They are irresistible. So to start off at number 30, Bad Bunny's Debí Tirar Más Fotos became an international sensation. Literally right from the start of the year. This is a record that came out on January 5th, 2025. All year long, it retained its power and presence in my mind. And for the rest of the world too. It's actually one of the most universally critically acclaimed albums of the whole year. The title track in particular is a personal favorite of mine from the year. It's a little on the mellow side, but I would listen to it on repeat. What a beautiful earworm. It's 17 tracks of blissful Latinos dance vibes. And it's another album that I know is ranking much higher on other year-end lists. It is without question going down into Puerto Rican music history, and well beyond that as well. Moving on to number 29, FK Twigs delivers one of the best techno-pop albums of the year with You Sexua. It's dense, layered, at times industrial, at times energetic and fun, and at times intimate. It is a powerhouse project from one of the most interesting pop voices working today. It's another slam dunk in her growing catalog of interesting music. And You Sexua turned out to be one of the gifts that kept on giving in 2025. This album on its own will be more than enough to make its mark on music history, but FK Twigs also released You Sexua Afterglow. Think of it as a sequel to the previous album. And not only that, but we also got a reissued version of You Sexua. It's mostly the same album, just with a few tracks swapped out and new ones put in. But of a weird and avant-garde choice. If you're looking for a great electronic pop album, this is a no-brainer. And on a side note, though I love the futuristic aesthetic, the album cover, photography, and music videos surrounding this album do give me the willies. Her alien look is a little uncanny. Next up at number 28, Stardust marks a major left turn for rapper Danny Brown. The moment I heard this album's title track single, I knew we were going to be in for one hell of a ride. I mean, when are we not with a Danny Brown project? It's no secret that he's one of the most creative and wild voices in modern rap music. But even with that prior knowledge, nothing would have prepared me for just how off the wall Stardust would be. And I was even less prepared to hear the nearly 9-minute The End featuring Polish singing. What an epic and unexpected plot twist for a Polish man to live through. And it's an amazing track as well, by the way. It's not just because it has Polish. This is some of the most fun I've seen Danny Brown have on any of his albums. And I'm glad to see him move forward artistically and personally in his life, especially after his last album, Quaranta, which I did appreciate but was very much more mellow in comparison. We're all so proud of you, Danny. Keep it up. Next, we have another famous rapper hitting us with a bit of a left turn. At number 27, Tyler the Creator's Don't Tap the Glass kinda came out of nowhere. I mean, we barely had time to process his last album from the year before, Chromacopia, which was another solid record from him. And it's not a small project either. That is before shadow dropping this thing on us. This might not be his most conceptual album to date. It is decidedly laid back and groovy, but it's still a total banger. And I actually grew to really appreciate its comparative simplicity in many ways. Not to say that there isn't nuance and power in it, of course. It really is an album that gets better each time I revisit it. Tyler is continuing his now legendary win streak, one album after another. Even with how short this record is, which it is just above 28 minutes in length, I still consider it to be an essential project from him. So you have no excuse to check it out seeing how short it is. Go do it if you haven't already. You don't want to miss out on this. And speaking of rap music, we're going to be transitioning into talking about a bunch of really unique rap records. And by God, there have been many this year. At number 26, we gotta talk about Mercy, the latest project from Arm & Hammer. It might not be their best record to date. I might actually argue that overall, it might be their weakest. But do keep in mind that Billy Woods and Lucid have one of the strongest and most consistent outputs in rap music history. It's just been one outstanding record after another from these guys, either from their solo material or when they unite as Arm & Hammer. But even so, there's so many remarkable moments to be found on Mercy, and it is the kind of record that only reveals itself the more you listen to it. You do need to spend time to fully uncover its depth, and even then you're likely to still continue uncovering new layers. This also marks the latest collaboration between Arm & Hammer and The Alchemist. Last time they made the sublime Haram album, which I think is my personal favorite from them. And of course, as always, The Alchemist is chopping out some pretty incredible beats. At number 25, we're gonna follow up with yet another Alchemist collaboration. Alfredo 2 is one of the smoothest albums you'll hear this year. There's so many tracks here that I just love the vibe of. It's exquisitely produced, expertly rapped, and hella catchy. It's another shining high point in Freddie Gibbs' growing catalog of fantastic rap albums. Though actually, the highlight on this record for me personally has to be Jid featuring on Gold Feet. Dude has literally mastered the art of not breathing while spitting pure fire for over a minute long. God damn! This is an easy recommendation for anyone looking for great rap music in 2025. Now, the next album is one that made a lot of waves, and for good reason. At number 24, Clips finally got back together to release their album Let God Sort 'Em Out. Their last record came out back in 2009. It's been 16 years since brothers Malice and Pusha T got back together to make a full album, and the end result is something truly groundbreaking. The rapping and lyrical wizardry is a force to be reckoned with. Both rappers are really giving 500% of themselves here, and the album includes a host of fantastic features, such as Kendrick Lamar, Tyler the Creator, and Nas. Truly the best of the best in the game. It is without question one of the most impressive rap albums of the year. Zero hate towards it, believe all the hype it's received. There are just other albums that personally resonate more with me, such as our next pick. At number 23, Jid is back with yet another great record. God does like ugly. I do love that album title. From the opening track, You Ugly, I knew I was in for quite the banger. In fact, for 6 consecutive tracks, it is one slam dunk after another. There's even an incredible feature from Clips on Community. Though my personal favorite feature has to be on VCRs with Vince Staples. Man, was that a great song. There may be a few tracks in the middle that I'm less keen on overall, but even so, there's no denying that Jid is one of the most exciting new voices in rap today. And this is further proof of that. Definitely an album I loved revisiting in 2025. Moving on to number 22, A$AP Rocky is slamming us with another giant and layered lyrical rap wizardry, honestly with Black Hole Superette. It's as quirky and fun as all of his projects, and yet another reminder of just how talented this guy is. It's honestly one of my favorite projects from him to date, which is no small task. It genuinely feels like there's enough lyrical content in this one album to fill an entire discography worth for many other rappers. Let's not even try to compare the mumble rappers. Astounding work as always, which makes it that much more impressive to consider A$AP Rocky made its second record in 2025. So since we're at number 22, why not cheat and include 2 albums at 22? I Heard It's a Mess Here Too followed up a few months later, and on some days I think I might even prefer this project. There are so many moments that I love. I may be speechless from the craftsmanship on display, but A$AP Rocky is certainly anything but speechless. Wow. And for one final album to close off this latest group of 10 albums before reaching the top 20, and though often this artist has been known to make hip-hop music, I don't think this album quite qualifies in that genre. In fact, it's hard to box it into one single genre. Enough teasing. At number 21, Quadeca's Vanisher Horizon Scraper is a visionary musical experience unlike anything else in 2025. I approach this album as a very meditative, soul-searching journey that dabbles in electronic, alternative pop, and ambient soundscapes. It feels very much like a soundtrack album in many ways. And indeed, there's a feature-length film that he put out on YouTube for the entire album that I really recommend fans to check out if you haven't already. It's an impressive and unique record, and the cherry on top are the fantastic features from Danny Brown and Maruja on the closing track, who were absolutely crushing. Damn, what an intriguing project. Folks, we're halfway through the list. Already we covered a bunch of fantastic records, and I'm sure that many of them will end up as favorites for others. But these lists are totally subjective, so let's not get too worked up over the precise rankings. We can all agree that these albums rule, regardless of the rankings here on this list. Still, we're reaching a point in the list where I'll be talking about albums that really resonate with me on a deep level. These are certainly the albums that I put the most time listening into, and they presented ideas that I just couldn't get out of my head all year long. And to start off the top 20, do people still think that rock music is dead? Horseshit. Sure, it might not be the predominant genre nowadays, but these next bunch of records are 2025's proof that rock music is very much alive. We already saw a couple great examples in the 30s, and we will see more further on down the list. But let's start turning up the heat with these ones. At number 20, the Black Keys are back with No Rain, No Flowers. An album that really caught me off guard, and actually I was listening to on repeat while healing from having my 4 wisdom teeth removed. Anecdote aside, I do love this band, but it has been many years since I fully dived into any of their records. From what I've tasted, they felt a little lukewarm in comparison. And of course, this album might never reach the heights of something like Brothers did. Even so, I genuinely believe that these are some of their catchiest and passionate songs to date. There are numerous tracks here that I just couldn't get out of my head, and still can't. I can hear it in my head right now. They ended up being major highlights in the year for me. Songs like Baby Girl, Kiss It, All My Life, and A Little Too High are pure fire. The keys are really tearing it up here, one track after another. So it's a little disappointing that I haven't heard too much praise about this record here. So I might be in the minority loving this album as much as I do, but I really don't care. This rules. Moving on to number 19, Moisturizer is the sophomore record from Wet Leg, and it's at the very least just as great as their debut. No simple task seeing how that was an instant out of the gate hit. This latest record is one raunchy, groovy, alt-rock banger after another. Easily one of the most infectiously catchy bunch of songs of the year. I found it to be irresistible. Wet Leg gets its hooks in you and doesn't let go for 1 second. They rock my banana socks off. It's a relatively short album with practically no skips, apart from 1 or 2 songs that I'm less keen on. But even with that being said, Wet Leg is without a single doubt in my mind one of the most exciting new acts in the alternative rock music scene in recent years. I'm very excited to see how they evolve going forward. And here's another album cover that creeps me out. Them nails freak me the fuck out. Next up at number 18, Deftones put out yet another great record with Private Music. This might not be their career highlight. White Pony will probably forever be their crowning achievement, but it is a rock solid album nonetheless, and further cements Deftones as one of the most consistent metal bands out there. 10 albums in and their power shows no signs of waning. As a longtime Deftones fan, it's incredibly impressive to witness their growing discography with a batting average that seems to grow higher with each new album. There are choice few Deftones albums that I would consider to be weak, and even then they at least have 1 or 2 major highlights. And even then, they have at least a few major highlights in the track list. This is not a band to underestimate. Wow. Private Music doesn't reinvent the band's sound, but it's some of the most polished and confident the band has ever sounded. I just love the crunching, heavy tone of those guitars, and I'm rather enamored with the dreamy, shoegazy quality that this album is constantly channeling. This was a fantastic listen from start to finish, and it's yet another record that I appreciate more and more each time I revisit it. And as a side note, seeing that I have been commenting on some of the album covers here, this has to be one of the most, if not the most iconic album cover of the entire year. I love it. Now for one more rock album before we move on to other genres, at least for now, and what a record this is. At number 17, Maruja finally put out their debut album, Pain to Power. I say finally because they've been making waves on the music scene for a while now, having released 5 or 6 EPs before this record, spanning all the way back to 2016. In any case, this is a giant, pulverizing, post-punk, art rock, noise rock, jazz rock record. Be prepared for a couple of giant 10-minute tracks here, and one of the fiercest creative rock statements of the year. If you're a fan of a band like Swans, this is a must for you. Even if you're not, I do consider this to be an essential 2025 record. Hot damn was I impressed by this UK band. Alright, time to deviate from the norms for the next few projects. I imagine that there are very few year-end lists in 2025 that include these albums, and yet I consider them to be essential musical moments of my life in 2025. Soundtracks, specifically video game soundtracks. I'm going to start off at number 16 with Blueprints. Trig and Gus had made the perfect meditative, zen, melancholic jazz soundtrack to the best puzzle game of the year. It's actually one of the crowning achievements of gaming overall in 2025. Go check out my year-end list of 2025 games if you're interested to hear me rave about that. But yeah, this really was the ideal tone setter for this brain teaser of a game. It helped me stay focused on the mysteries at hand, and in key moments when I was finally making major progress, the music elevated the whole experience to euphoric levels. Indeed, oftentimes the music brings the game to a near spiritual level of existence. It's remarkable. I love everything about Blueprints. At number 15, a gigantic project that has been in the making for years. The Haunt is a massive, super massive 99-track horror soundtrack album, split over 2 volumes. The one-man army known as Supermassive Quasar went all out to make this enigmatic and terrifying sonic landscape of dark sounds and melodies. It's intriguing to say the least. And as dark as it is, there are beautiful melancholic moments sprinkled throughout. There's a surprising range to discover, only for those who dare to dive deep in its murky depths. It's probably the kind of project that won't be most people's cup of tea. It's a lot and often super fucked up. Soundtrack records generally don't get nearly as much exposure or love in this dark, dark world. But as far as I am concerned, this is a veritable treasure trove of countless ambient and horror gems. It's an album that I continue to revisit on a regular basis, and on a personal level, I'm so proud of Dom to have seen this project come to fruition. I know it's been a long journey, but the end result is crushing. The only real issue, apart from maybe a few tracks I can skip, which overall I am delighted with how much of this album resonates with me, especially considering just how many tracks there are on both volumes. But really, there is just one thing that is missing, and that's a game, a world for this soundtrack to inhabit. Even so, this is an incredible dark ambient adventure that I highly recommend to those who love classic video game horror soundtracks, such as Silent Hill or Resident Evil. As imposing as the haunt may be in scope and size, there is one video game soundtrack in 2025 that eclipses even that. At number 14, Clair Obscur Expedition 33. I'm sure many of you are aware, perhaps even non-gamers, the praise around this game has been as widespread as anything could get. It truly is the global game of the year for 2025, and an indie cultural phenomenon that took the world by storm. If you want to hear more of my thoughts on the game itself, once again you can check out that year-end video I did for games. You better believe it's ranking high there. But for now, let's focus on the soundtrack of this game. Frankly, I struggle to put everything I feel regarding the music into words. It has tremendous power. Not only can it be incredibly epic, there are literally moments that have my hair standing on end, but a lot of the choir's sensual melodies are the ones that really resonate on a deep level. It takes the incredible story and world building and elevates it to impossible heights, literally cementing itself into the all-time great video games. I don't think there's a doubt in anyone's mind that this is the video game soundtrack of the year. Nothing comes close to it. Laurent Testard, the composer of Clair Obscur, went above and beyond the call to duty. It shows that he gave everything of himself in this project as if his very life depended on it. There's power, grace, and an unfathomable amount of variety here. The album contains 154 songs, totaling around 7 hours of music. And it's an outlier as well as seeing just how viral it went on streaming platforms. It has millions of listens. The 11-minute Une vie à t'aimer has over 18 million plays on Spotify. Wow! And we gotta sing the highest of praise to singer Alice Duport-Percier, whose voice is simply enchanting and beautiful. Once again, just wow. Okay, time to cheat again and open a portal for one more pick at number 14. I just couldn't find a spot to fit it in, so fuck it. We're going to squeeze it in here in this no man's land territory. Sue me. Bryce Dressner, one of the key members of The National, made this soundtrack for Train Dreams. And this has to be my favorite film soundtrack of the year. It so beautifully captures the film's soul-searching, poetic heart. To experience this film's cinematography paired with music is one of the greatest artistic moments you can experience in any film in the year 2025. And spoiler alert, yes, Train Dreams will be on my year-end list for films of 2025. But I won't say where it lands. Check back on the channel once it's ready. Before finishing this fantastic collection of 10 or more, I guess it's for cheating, albums, here are a couple of incredible rap albums that honestly could break into the top 10, and perhaps in many cases they should. These lists are a bit of an impossible task to make, so in the end, who cares? They're amazing each in their own right. Enough of that. At number 13, Navy Blue puts out yet another soulful and beautiful hip-hop album with The Sword and the Soaring. Few rappers have such a beautiful and poetic soul, whose music makes me feel like I'm floating up to the heavens. With each new project from Navy Blue, I become more and more enamored with his music. It's an incredible, deep, and personal project that will move you to your very core. Another record that I struggle to put into words how I feel about it. At number 12, we gotta give it up for Backwash with Only Dust Remains. I've been following Backwash for some time now. She's a bit of a local Montreal experimental alternative hip-hop phenomenon, and I think this might be her crowning achievement thus far. It's lost nothing of its experimental nature, even if it is comparatively less in the industrial and horror aesthetics that early Backwash albums explored. But I do think the progression on this album is remarkable, and ends up feeling much more uplifting from anything we've seen from this artist previously. It's a beautiful and potent artistic statement. Keeping in line with the optimistic progression, at number 11, Live Laugh Love is Earl Sweatshirt's most upbeat and positive record to date. It's a massive contrast from his past super depressive albums, which, don't get me wrong, they were amazing albums, some rap songs in particular, but I do think this latest one is one of his best to date. It's still just as short and to the point as many of his last projects, clocking in around 24 minutes with 11 songs, but its brevity does not rob it of any depth. It's a kind of album that is super exciting to revisit over and over again, because of just how damn good it is, but also there's just so much packed into these short songs. Every time I listen, I find new little details to appreciate. And instrumentally, there are so many songs here that I just wish were longer. Perhaps that is the only issue with this album. It sounds so good, it's almost criminal seeing how short they are. Earl Sweatshirt has always been one of my favorite poetic rap voices in modern rap music, and this latest album is more proof of that. Whew, finally at the top 10. Things are really heating up in here. These are the records that made the biggest creative impact in my life this year. There might be a few surprise choices, there always are on such lists, and it is part of the great fun of making these kind of rankings. But I generally think that these are the most impressive and in many ways most challenging records that I listened to that year. In some cases, a few of these picks are earworms that I just couldn't get out of my head. God damn, they were hot. And in a few other instances, they were records that were slow burns that really grew on me. In preparation for this list, it dawned on me just how important these records were in my life in 2025, and in how singular and unique they were in the grander scope of the year. I have zero regrets with my choices. So, without further ado, let's finish this list with style. To start off at number 10, Balloonerism. This is the second posthumous album from Mac Miller. The last one was Circles, which released in 2020. If you haven't listened to that one, go do that now. It's an incredible project. And I must say, myself and many Mac Miller fans genuinely appreciate that there wasn't a Russian clamor to put out more content and capitalize on his fame after his untimely death. And it actually feels like something that was handled with grace. And I have to admit, I'm actually a really late bloomer for Mac Miller's music. It's only been roughly 2 years since I properly introduced myself to his work. So this album came out at a time when my appreciation for Mac Miller was in full bloom and allowed me to discover yet another facet of him. Sonically, I think this is a really avant-garde record, even by today's standard, and even more so when you consider the fact that this was recorded around 2014. This was during the Faces mixtape era, which personally I think is his best project, followed by a very close second position with Circles. Anyway, I love the very woozy, neo-soul, psychedelic flavor that Balloonerism explores. It captivated my attention from the first moment I listened to it, and incidentally, it is one of the first great records of 2025. It came out mid-January, and even to this day, it's an album that I love to revisit. My highest of recommendations. Moving up to number 9, Baby by Dijon has to be the most forward-thinking pop album of the year. It's an extremely experimental and glitchy mix of R&B and soul. And I gotta admit, this is the first I hear of Dijon. And I didn't realize until much later that he contributed plenty to Justin Bieber's Swag album and that Bon Iver album that I mentioned at the start of this list. And I know that folks have been waiting a long time for this album to come out. It's been 4 years since his debut album? But boy was this worth the wait. The end result is simply gorgeous, enrapturing even. It's a relatively short project, just shy of being 38 minutes in length, but it is an unforgettable musical experience with so many dazzling highlights. I couldn't recommend this more if I tried to. At number 8 is another choice that is outside of my usual wheelhouse. And indeed, growing up, I've never been super keen on electronic music, but it seems as time goes on, I'm opening up more and more to this genre of music. I mean, how could I not with a mesmerizing project like Tranquilizer from One Oh Tricks Point Never? It is certainly one of the most enchanting, mysterious, and mind-opening albums of the entire year. And in many ways, it's a very zen and calming experience. That is, with a mix of a lot of glitchy and noisy distortion thrown in the mix. It's a wonderful ambient record that I would find myself listening to at work, or whenever I had the need to focus on a task at hand. Lyrical music can be a little distracting at times. It really depends on what I have on my plate in front of me. And so this is another example where I'm a total newcomer to this artist. I'm discovering One Oh Tricks Point Never with this album. So yeah, I'm very, very late to the party. Daniel Lopatin clearly has been very busy these last 20 years. Better late than never, I guess. And I didn't realize it at the time, but now that I've been looking into Daniel Lopatin a bit more thoroughly, he also made the incredible and original soundtrack for Marty Supreme, a definite powerhouse cinematic experience of 2025. And another spoiler for that upcoming year-end list for films of 2025. I will not say where it lands, but you better believe it's there. Anyways, yeah, Tranquilizer is an incredible record that I see myself revisiting numerous times in the foreseeable future. In fact, I already did so a couple times this week. At number 7, a very different kind of record from the last one. There's nothing calm or relaxing about the latest Viagra Boys record. Viagra Boys? Is that how you pronounce it? In any case, I do love the album title. And that cheeky attitude from the title translates perfectly into this very scuzzy, post-punk album from one of the wildest and coolest Swedish bands to ever grace this green earth. It's just a blast from start to finish. The Bog Body has to be one of the funnest songs of the year. And there are numerous other highlights. Though a moment ago I did say that there's nothing calm about this record, there are a few standout mellow tracks, such as Uno 2 or Medicine for Horses. Still, it's a crazy punk rock album for the ages. And I just can't get enough of it. It is smoking hot. Next, we'll have a bit of an exception on this list. It will be a bit of a hot take, diverging from the usual structure you can find on such a list, but it's my list so I can do whatever I damn well please. At number 6, we do not have an album, we have an EP. Actually, 2 EPs. Paris, Texas has delivered 2 fantastic EPs. They are absolute fire. First they put out They Left Me With a Sword, and then they put out They Left Me With a Gun. I personally much prefer the second EP, but they're both bangers. Can we just add both of them together and consider it to be an album-length project? I'm going to, and I don't care who disagrees, you can call the cops if you need to. Both projects feature a handful of super creative and snappy short songs that explore a killer mix of rap, trap, and rock aesthetics. There's even a healthy mix of electronic vibes. This music is so energetic, it just gets me out of my seat. It's rare that we find artists that explore these genres quite so effectively. As far as I'm concerned, this has infinite replayability. Hot damn! Yo, we're at the top 5! The cream of the crop. For the last 5 records, I decided to focus on a bunch of fantastic rock or alternative rock records. These are among the best examples one could give as proof that rock music is very much alive. And they also happen to be my very favorites of the year. But there is one exception. There is one last rap album we need to talk about before ending this list. At number 5, Billy Woods is back again with his latest solo record, Gollywog. Hands down the best rap album of the year. But even so, it did take me quite a lot of time for me to warm up to it. On first listen, I wasn't sure what I felt about it. This is not your usual accessible and catchy rap album like some of the other picks on this list. And no hate to them, of course. They totally have their merit here. Though on the flip side, this is a dark, complex, poetic labyrinth of a rap record, with many of the strangest sounds you'll hear on any album this year, let alone for a rap album. The more I'd revisit Gollywog, and the more I'd hear people talk about it and dissecting it, I would discover new revelations and nuggets of gold in it. It's the kind of project that just keeps revealing new details about itself. And looking back on the year as a whole, it proves to be such a singular experience. Nothing comes close to resembling an album like Gollywog. Billy Woods truly is one of the most talented voices in rap, not just today, but of all time. His continual output is just mind-boggling. Holy crap. Next, at number 4 is the So For More album from Model Actress, Pirouette. These guys truly have an instantly recognizable sound that is so unique to them. I was actually a little late to the party to discover their first album, Dog's Body, though I did include it in my 2023 year-end list actually. It's just that I don't feel like I've fully started to appreciate it until right after that moment. Since then, I've listened to that album countless times, along with their Suntan Damocles EP, which I just couldn't stop listening to, and I still haven't fully gotten over it. Model Actress has become one of my favorite new weird bands on the scene today. And I always think of a hilariously accurate comment on YouTube that I saw at one point that stated that Model Actress sounds like the kind of music you'd hear at a gay haunted nightclub. I can't unsee it now. Low-key kind of accurate when I come to think of it. They're a vibe to say the least. And their second album is just as good as anything they put out to date. It's an incredibly solid new record that plays to the strengths of their unique alternative, groovy, industrial, dance rock DNA. It's wild, off-kilter, and oftentimes cacophonous. Poppy in particular really gets me pumped. It definitely won't be everyone's cup of tea for those reasons, but even the softer cuts really resonate with me. Tracks like Acid Rain and the album closer Baton in particular is a mesmerizing track. That's one of my favorite album endings of the year. Yeah, I fucking love this record. And in contrast to 2024, for those who watched my top 30 albums of 2024, you might recall that I got to see a lot of live shows that year. 2025 was a different energy for me, which is totally fine. But the one concert I did get to see in 2025 was indeed for Model Actress touring for this latest album. And as you can imagine, they slayed, climbing up the ranks. Here's an album that I don't think I've seen on any year-end list, at least thus far, which is a damn shame because I love it. I mean, obviously, seeing how high up in the list we are. Anyway, at number 3, Squid put out yet another fantastic post-rock record with Cowards. This album came out early in the year, back on February 7th, 2025, which now that I see that date, that was the day I met my girlfriend. A good omen to say the least. Anyway, this album can be accused of having novelty bias, because I've been sitting with this thing all year long, and I can confidently say that it features some of the most creative rock songs of the year. The track Crispy Skin is a powerful opener to the record, and it has a really interesting evolution halfway through. A lot of the songs and the album as a whole actually has a remarkable progression, culminating into the phenomenal finale with the 8-minute long Well Met Fingers Through the Fence. That might just be the best closing track off any album this year. The build up to the ending is just euphoric. God damn, I love it. It's a bummer to me that more people aren't singing its praise. Their last record, Oh Monolith, was just as great. You should absolutely check it out. I'm truly excited to see what comes next from this inventive UK band. My highest of recommendations. The next album is widely considered to be the runaway hit rock album of the year for pretty much everyone. It's hard to argue with that statement because it's just such a hit in every sense of the word. So even though it's not on my number 1 spot, don't fret over that detail because it deserves all its praise and then some. At number 2, Getting Killed is the latest record from Geese, an up-and-coming rock band from New York City. They've been kicking around since 2016, when the band formed while they were still in high school, if I understand correctly. In any case, I discovered them with their last album, 3D Country, which was a massive surprise hit for me that year. You guys need to check it out if you haven't. And this latest record is without a doubt their strongest crop of songs yet. And I'm genuinely surprised with how widespread the love for this album is. I mean, I'm glad, don't get me wrong, it's an amazing album. But it's not your typical airwaves hit kind of rock songs. Geese is a strange mix of indie rock, post-punk, and dance punk. It definitely has an experimental element embedded in its DNA, though perhaps it's the authentic charisma the band has. That emulates that energy of our classic rock and roll heroes of old that channeled that so effortlessly. They echo that essence in every second of Getting Killed, but in a very modern way that feels true to their own sound, character, and era. It was a fantastic listen from the start, but it's yet another example that just keeps on growing on me the more time goes by. There are very few moments on this album that I don't love to some extent. Some of the songs I revisited the most this year are found on Getting Killed. Songs like Husbands, Islands of Men, Opioids and Cocaine, and Taxes. And this song might just have the most iconic quotable rock and roll moment of any song this year. If you want me to pay my taxes, you better come over with a crucifix. You're gonna have to nail me down. And ensue guitar licks and heavenly vocals. What a banger of a single, foreshadowing a fantastic album that did not disappoint once it finally came out. And that final track, Long Island City, Here I Come, I know I sang praise for the closing track from that Squid record a moment ago, and that statement remains. But it comes as a close second right behind this one. What a barn burn of a track to end a fantastic record. That was insane. And now that Getting Killed album alone is more than enough to land it at the number 2 spot. But we gotta cheat one last time on this year in this and squeeze in another album right next to it. That would be Heavy Metal by Cameron Winter, the vocalist from Geese. Technically, this is an album that came out in December of 2024, so we're totally breaking the rules here. But I'm sorry, I've been blissfully unaware of this project for way too long, and it took me a criminally long time for me to finally get around to listening to it. But when I finally did get a chance to sink my teeth into it, man, it's such a fantastic singer-songwriter album. In fact, one of the best I've listened to in a while. I'm blown away by tracks like Nausicaa, Love Will Be Revealed, Drinking Age, and especially $0, where Cameron croons, "You're making me feel like a dollar in your hand. You're making me feel like I'm a $0 man." Tragic, but beautifully delivered, both vocally and instrumentally. I am so impressed with Cameron Winter's skill and charisma. And I'm even more impressed to learn that he's just 23 years old. This kid is a powerhouse of talent. Don't miss out either on his solo record or any of the projects he's worked on with Geese. These are modern rock classics. And here we are at the album of the year for 2025. As far as I'm concerned, there's only one album that I could choose for this spot, and that would be Forever How Long by Black Country New Road. This album has, in my opinion, the most passionate performances of the year. There isn't a single moment on this record that isn't handled with grace and beauty. It's uplifting, colorful, poetic, enchanting, and a veritable powerhouse of progressive rock, art rock, ingenuity. I'm blown away by this record from front to back. Honestly, I'm still processing the departure of the original singer Isaac Woods, who left the band nary a week before the release of their sophomore masterful album, And From Up There, which, FYI, that was the 2022 Album of the Year on the Bottomless Pit. That makes 2 Album of the Years on this channel from Black Country New Road. If that is not the highest praise we can bestow on that band, I don't know what is. In any case, it was such a shocking turn of events to have a singer as singular and charismatic as Isaac Wood was to step away from the band. I had a hard time imagining how the band could continue after being left with a void that big. And yet, the remaining 6 members of the band held intact and are stronger than ever, and without any bad will towards Isaac's departure. It's actually quite beautiful how they handled this next chapter in the band and their sentiments regarding him. And before moving on, I hope you're doing well, Isaac, with whatever it is you're doing in your life. I have actually no idea what he's doing, and I don't feel like looking it up. Just give the man his piece, whatever it is he needs. Back to the band, they spread their wings and have evolved in a new and exciting direction. And this time, it's the ladies that took up the singing. And what gloriously wonderful voices they have. Simply marvelous. It's hard for me to express fully the depths of what this record makes me feel. I genuinely think it's best for all of you to experience this record for yourselves if you haven't already done that. Forever How Long is something rare and magical. I can't think of a better characteristic to describe my pick for Album of the Year. What a beauty. So there it is, the top 40 albums of 2025 on the Bottomless Pit. I do love taking the time to get all excited about all the amazing art I've experienced in my life, and so thank you to all the artists who made all this phenomenal works of art that have made my life infinitely better and more exciting. Your craft does make a difference and makes the world a better place to live in as far as I'm concerned. So if you did enjoy this video, give this video a like, a good old Dale Cooper thumbs up, comment on the albums you loved, or perhaps comment on some of the choices that you disagree. I do enjoy a healthy debate. It makes life that much more interesting. And of course, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It does help me tremendously to gain more exposure and grow the channel. Though this YouTube is not my primary career, and I imagine it never will be, indeed that part of my soul remains in the arena of game development, of where I am hard at work every day. Nonetheless, I do genuinely enjoy the challenge of coming up on here and expressing my love and opinions on art on this here YouTube channel. Thank you all for your continued support and presence in my life. And so, with all that being said, wishing you and all your loved ones nothing but the best. That's 2 out of 3 year-end lists completed. The next and final one is always the biggest project that I have on this channel. It's gonna take a minute or two, so please don't hold your breath. You can expect it out around March maybe? I think it's a fitting time to release the top films of 2025 around the Oscar season. Until then, I'll keeping on, and I will be putting out regular short videos on films or games that I've completed. Take care everyone, bye!